Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm your host, Pattsun, and today we're gonna be taking a look at r/NuclearRevenge, where OP's ex-girlfriend had an embarrassing public meltdown. Let's begin. She played me, ruined my self-esteem, and kept me as a backup, but ended up screaming on the streets. Posted by Reddit user Gibbets.
I was reminded of this story from my youth while comforting my son. He is 17, just got his first girlfriend but broke up with her just 2 weeks later over a text message. She did make all kinds of lame excuses, but I knew she was just playing him. The excuses she made were all bullshit. She just didn't like him and didn't want to tell him the truth. That he somehow didn't match up to her expectations and that it wasn't his fault that she didn't give him a chance. Plus, there was a rumor she already had another boyfriend after saying her dad didn't approve of her having my son as her boyfriend. Way to throw your dad under the bus. I told him that the best revenge was to just be happy without her. I related a story on how I did that. I honestly didn't even remember this almost 30-year story until I had to console my heartbroken son. In high school, my sister had a friend named Jen. I knew she liked me because my sister kept trying to play matchmaker. Jen was upset that you didn't talk to her when she came over. I think you and Jen would be cute together, things like that. This not-so-subtle hinting went on from my sophomore year all the way to my junior year. Jen isn't ugly or anything, she's just not my type physically, but in the end, I gave in and asked her out. I never had a girlfriend before and figured it might be enjoyable, but it just went downhill from there. I actually liked her quite a bit and was more invested than I thought, but it wasn't reciprocated. It was like the nicer and more attentive I was to her, the colder she was to me. I was really confused. I figured my sister was pulling a fast one on me because 3 weeks later she just broke up with me. This really devastated me. Was I just a pretty face with a boring personality to her? Like once she got to know me, I just fell off the pedestal. Maybe I was too clingy, more into it than she was, and it creeped her out. Like my son's situation, she was quick to get my replacement in less than a month, which made me feel even worse. Since we went to the same school and she was my sister's friend, I couldn't make a clean break of her either, which made it worse. Well, it messed me up so bad that I didn't date for most of high school. Went to college after that, and the first summer back, my parents were out on vacation. Me and my sister invited some friends over, hang out and drink some alcohol. Some friends brought some more friends and their significant others. Me and my sister had lots of mutual friends, but most of them were hers. I was hoping to just relax playing video games until someone I knew dropped by. Of course, Jen was invited, so I really was planning on staying away from her at all cost. To be honest, I wasn't looking forward to it. One of first people to arrive was a family friend, Stephanie, who I basically grew up with. For some reason her sister was there too, as well two of her friends. I didn't pay too much attention to the strangers until one of them just sat next to me, which I found strange. It was a long couch, not a love seat. She could have sat at the ends away from me, but she sat right next to me. Figuring I should be a good host, I introduce myself and she tells me she's Tina. Tall, well-built, pouty lips, great body. I was pretty impressed. I try to hide it by not making eye contact and continue playing my Soul Calibur 2. Make some small talk, and I just thinking, why is she talking to some loser playing video games when my house is already getting crowded with strangers? Now some people I actually did invite are coming through the door with beer, Johnny Walker, Goldschlager, and we are getting shit-faced. Somehow our little get-together has turned into a full-fledged house party, but Tina is just glued to me while I'm making the rounds. Eventually, we end up all gathered around the living room doing shots. I'm on the couch, Tina's sitting next to me with head on my shoulder like she's really tired. Then I just did something so out of character that I cringe to this day. I turn towards her, our noses touching, and tell her, go ahead. As if magnet were in our lips, we had our tongues in each other's mouths in milliseconds, just full-blown making out in front of everyone, including Jen. We must have made people uncomfortable because when we opened our eyes, the full room was empty except for us. Then the front porch was getting a bit loud, so we went to check it out. We hear Jen yelling in the front lawn, "OP, you are mine. I had you first. You can't do this to me." Sobbing, drunk and loud. Acting like I cheated on her even though we haven't been an item for years, and then she just kept yelling that while running down my street. A few people go to grab her before the neighbors called the cops. Tina looks at me all worried and asked if Jen and I had history. Bolstered by the alcohol, I just shrugged. I honestly didn't know I had that kind of effect of women. Sounds cocky, but I really didn't. She broke up with me after all. Why is she claiming ownership now? I finished giving Tina the tour of my bedroom that night and drove her home around 3 a.m. It was sloppy and not my best performance, but it was the first time for both of us. I can't believe I almost forgot losing my V-card if it wasn't for my son. Me and Tina did end up dating. It was my first serious relationship. I probably would have married her if the distance wasn't such an issue, but I did learn a lot. I learned that the best revenge is to just live well and rub it in other people's faces.
Okay, OP. So remind me again, why is your post on NuclearRevenge? You told your son that the best revenge is living a happy life without his ex. But then you told him a story about an ex who left you feeling so heartbroken that you didn't date for most of high school. This appears to be less nuclear revenge and more of a don't follow my sad example type of lesson. There's no revenge in this story, just an embarrassing meltdown of a hoe that's bitter. Don't get me wrong, it's still a valuable story to hear, especially for the younger men listening. But I think this belongs more on Surviving Infidelity. Either way, I hope your son starts feeling better, and I am glad that you feel good about reclaiming your lost self-esteem all those years ago. Well done, OP. And now for today's second story. How my father-in-law learned about DNA and tolerance. Posted by Reddit user Cheddar Burner.
When I started dating my wife, I had been living in the USA on an H-1B visa for a few years. It was truly love at first sight. We knew from day one we were perfect for each other. She was a Southern Baptist from the deep South. Me, tall, blonde, all-American look, but not American. Her, beautiful Southern blonde. After dating a few months, she decided that the time was right to introduce me to her parents. She tried warning me about safe topics to discuss, golf, college football, and some topics to avoid like religion, sex, politics, the big ones. I was nervous as you might expect. Well, her parents kept the wheels on pretty well our first meeting, but as we were watching a college football game, her father let slip a look at that N-bomb run.
Racist.
I was floored. I had never heard that language out of my wife, and I went from excited about our future to what the hell I have gotten into. Because of the large amount of alcohol involved with that event, I waited until the next morning to bring it up with my wife. She was mortified and said that yes, her father was very racist. She took great pains assuring me she was not, and thus we were able to stay together, but I had to endure her parents for holidays and events. I finally get the courage to ask her to marry me, and if you are Southern, you know that you have to ask the father for permission before you can ask the daughter. Well, I call to schedule a time to talk to him, but he is very cagey and seems to know what is going on. I am busy, I can't meet. He comes up with every reason in the world to not meet with me. Finally, I just blurt out, "Listen, I am trying to do the right thing and ask for your daughter's hand in marriage because that is important to her. However, if you keep making this difficult, I will just skip you and ask her directly." Well, that just set the old man off. She won't say yes, you aren't American. I bet you are just marrying her to get a green card. Isn't that how you foreigners do this? I let my inner smartass out after this one and let him know that there are far easier ways to get green cards than marrying into his family. He responded, "Fine, ask her, but she isn't marrying a foreigner." Many instances of issues over the last 20-some years with her family and my foreignness. About 4 years ago, I decided that I wanted to get our DNA tested. I have always been curious, and we all have our family stories about where we came from. So I pulled the trigger for my wife and I and both kids, as well as my parents. You needed a different email for each submission back then, so I had my wife's info sent directly to her. I used my alt emails for both kids and my main for me. The results come back and I immediately go to mine. Scandinavian, English, Irish, Scottish. I am literally glow in the dark white. One of my children matches my heritage pretty closely. My other, while still a genetic match as child, shows some Congo DNA, like 2% if I remember correctly. This did make me curious, so I asked my wife to see her report. "I don't have it." "Okay, let's give it a few days, maybe yours is last." 3 weeks later she was too busy to check, but didn't think she had it. My parents had theirs, my kids and I had ours. So I sat her down and said, "I know you have the results, and I am curious if you have Congo DNA like my youngest." Her shoulders slumped, she started to tear you, and said, "I do have the results, I am 8% Congo. This is going to kill my dad." Well, 20 years of backhanded comments about me being foreign and all his racist crap. Well, I had a plan. Over the next couple of months, we talked about this back and forth, and she realized that she shouldn't be protecting this man. He needed to face the truth, and maybe, just maybe, it may make him a little more tolerant. So I shared the results with my youngest, who was quite proud of the results and shared that with people proudly. Fast forward to our next visit with the in-laws. We were watching college football again, and my father-in-law made another comment about blacks because he tried hard not to say the N-bomb in front of my children. My youngest said, "I am 2% black." My father-in-law launched like a rocket out of his chair. "No, you aren't. You are white and should be proud of that." My son, "I am 2% Congolese and proud of that." My father-in-law, "You are not. Who taught you to say that?" My son, "My dad." My father-in-law then looks at me and says, "Why are you teaching him to say this? He is white." Me, "Funny you should mention that. I happen to have our genetic profiles here with me." Me, "Funny thing about genetics. Here are my results as well as my parents. Here are my kids' results. Here is your daughter's results. The question I have is, does the Congo DNA come from your side of the family or your wife's? I am more than happy to buy a test to help you explore your rich history." My father-in-law, "This is bullshit science mumbo jumbo. Ain't no way." Me, "Actually, it is very accurate and only getting more accurate as more people share. Come on, let me get a test for you and your wife." My father-in-law, "Over my dead body." Ironically, that was the day the foreigner comment stopped. Never again was it pointed out I was from another country, nor were my children mixed. My father-in-law learned a hard lesson that day, and it was by far the best money I have ever spent. Still hates me, but I shifted the power dynamic.
OP, did he really learn his lesson, or did he just stop talking about it when you were around? Maybe the lesson that he learned was not to argue with you. Also, today I learned that a person from Congo is called Congolese, and Congolese is also the international name of the language spoken there. Well, would you look at that? We all learned something here. The more you know. This was a very good story, OP. Well done. Viewer support is the best way for me to remain independent and continue bringing you these daily videos, which will always be here on my channels for you to watch absolutely free. So please consider subscribing to me on Rumble and on YouTube. Both will be linked in the description box down below. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you even somewhat enjoyed today's story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you really like it, consider subscribing to PattSun to never miss a future upload. Stay strong.